Thank you very much. Before I kind of get into my prepared remarks, I want to talk briefly a little bit about what Marty was talking about earlier. We are in the majority, the Republicans, in both the Senate, the House, and of course the presidency, but we all feel like we're not. Does anybody else get that sense? Why is that? And I think here's the reason why, and I think Brenda hit on this a little bit. We have a lot of folks running for office who say one thing to run and convince you of something, and then when they get into office, they do the exact opposite. That's what we're dealing with right now. But one person who has stood strong with every campaign promise, and one person who stood strong with every promise that was made and the things that I told you I was going to do is standing right here. I told you about my background. I told you about what we would do. Now let me just briefly tell you about what is the county attorney. The county attorney is the district attorney, the DA, the head prosecutor for the entire county. But what's unique about Arizona is that not only do I handle all the prosecutions, which is close to about 3,500 to 4,000 felony cases a year. I have about 70 attorneys that work for me. We handle all of that. We also are the legal advisors to the Board of Supervisors, the Planning and Zoning Department, our elections, the recorder, the treasurer, all of the county departments. They are supposed to, in theory, come to me for legal advice. And that's what we're dealing with right now, is they have chosen to not do that. But when I came here multiple times and talked to you about what I was going to do if you elected me to office, I told you a couple of things. And the number one thing is we're going to actually prosecute criminals. And that's what we've done. I said, and you can look at the numbers and there's evidence of that. Did you know that criminal prosecutions are up in many areas of Pinal County of 30%? Think about that, 30%. Now, just like the border issues, is that we didn't need to change the law, we needed to change the person who was enforcing the law. And so the reason why it's up 30% is not because there's 30% more crime, but because we're actually starting to enforce it. And we're actually seeing the evidence of that. And I think we're going to see increases in that number at least through the next year or so. And I want to see increases in that number because we're actually holding people accountable. We're holding those people on the 347 accountable who are pulling out guns, and we're charging them with aggravated assault. We're holding people accountable who are speeding on the 347, and we're holding them accountable for criminal charges. We are doing that. Now, we're not perfect, but we're getting a lot of these folks. Now, in addition, one of the other things I told you was my background was in prosecuting crimes against children. I prosecuted both for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and for the United States Marine Corps, where I currently still serve. And I said, we are going to create an elite unit, a special victims unit, dedicated to prosecuting crimes against children, child trafficking cases, all of those, and that's exactly what we did. We now have an elite unit here in Pinal County for the first time, and we're actually prosecuting crimes against children. So much so that we also, last December, held our very first ever sting operation where we went after child traffickers in Santan Valley. That was led by the Pinal County Attorney's Office. That's the first time we've ever done that in the history of the Pinal County Attorney's Office. We caught 8 individuals. Think about that. And they came from all over the state. Maricopa County, I think we had 1 or so come from here. We had some come from Yuma. So now these people know not only do we have an elite unit to prosecute these folks, but we're going to come after you offensively now. We're not going to just sit back and allow people to be victimized anymore. We're going to come after you. We're going to put undercover police officers in those circumstances, and we're going to then prosecute you. And then we're going to put you in prison for a long, long time, where you belong. In many cases, and I was frustrated with this before I got into office, you see these people who are abusing kids, molesting their grandchildren, and you think, why are they getting slaps on the wrist? So I implemented policies in my office where no longer do they get slaps on the wrist. You're going to be put in prison for life. And that's exactly what happened about 2 weeks ago. We had an individual that decided to molest 2 of his nieces. Prior, that person would get a plea deal. But under my policies, I said, no, you're not getting a plea deal. If you want to plead guilty straight up to the crime, you can. Otherwise, we're going to take you to trial. we're going to prosecute you, and we're going to put you in prison forever. And that's exactly what happened. He said, no, I'm not going to take a deal. He said, no, I'm not going to take a deal, and we said, good. So we tried him, we convicted him, and now he's going to sit in prison for the next 300 years. And this is happening all over the county. Unfortunately, same with juvenile crimes. That was another frustration of mine. It's like, just because you're 16 or 17 and you're committing a violent crime, why should you be treated differently than an adult? You commit an adult crime, you should do adult time. And that's exactly what we're seeing here under my new policies. So in Coolidge, we had a circumstance where a couple of gangs were fighting. And so one of the 17-year-old gang members decided to shoot up a house. This was in Coolidge. And they unfortunately got the wrong house. So one night, this is a true story, we just had the prosecution recently. One night, a young girl, 14 years old, was sick, and she was sleeping with her mother's bed. Her mother was actually holding her in her arms because she was sick. Well, these teens decided to shoot up the house with an AR-15, and an AR-15 went through the brick house and struck that 14-year-old in the head, killed her, literally in her mother's arms. We actually have the body cam footage of the police going into the house, and the mother still holding the pieces of her daughter. This is what we're dealing with here in Pinal. This needs to stop. And so, again, under prior policies, this person will be charged as a juvenile. And I said, no, we're not doing that anymore. You do that, you're going to prison for life. And that's exactly what happened. He was convicted, and now he's going to be in prison forever, even at 17 years old. And I know a lot of people think that's harsh, but until we start holding people accountable for their actions, then things aren't going to change here. I am tired of accepting that we should have homeless people and needles roaming in our parks. I am tired of accepting that crime is the norm, that our stores should be robbed, that I can't get deodorant at Target without having to open a box. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of worrying about my children going outside and being hit and killed by a drunk driver. I'm tired of if you accidentally cut somebody off on the 347 or the 87 or the 287, that somebody pulls out a gun and nothing happens. That's not going to happen anymore. That's what we're changing. And so we've done additional things, which has caused a little bit of controversy because, unfortunately, even with Republicans, people don't like accountability. And so last August, we spoke to the Department of Homeland Security and said, we have a illegal immigrant problem here in our county. They're committing a lot of crimes. So we decided to partner with ICE to share information. That created a lot of controversy. The Board of Supervisors came back and said, no, you can't do that. And I said, yes, I can. It's within my purview. We can absolutely share information. And if we find criminal illegal aliens who are committing crimes in our county, we should be able to arrest them and deport them. And so that's exactly what we've done. We've teamed up. We've teamed up. However, the board and our sheriff have decided to sue me. They filed an injunction against me to stop me from that partnership, to partnering with our federal agencies. And so yesterday we filed our motion in response, saying that you don't have the authority. In fact, I have the authority to partner with our federal partners to get resources from our federal partners to keep our communities safe. Because it's my opinion that we should use every means possible to keep each one of you safe, each one of your families safe, for our community. And that's exactly what you elected me to do, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. In addition, I want to talk about elections a little bit. Who thinks the 2022 election was fair? I don't. It was a mess, especially here in this county. And so we need to change that. And unfortunately, the state decided to elect Adrian Fontes to be our Secretary of State, to run our elections. Think about that. A guy who couldn't run the elections in Maricopa County. You get promoted to your highest level of incompetence, right? The old Peter principle, you heard that? Yeah. So now he's running the statewide elections. So recently he's decided to just change party names, act illegally. We've successfully sued him, and this past week we won a lawsuit saying that he can no longer change a party named the No Labels Party to the Arizona Independent Party. We won that lawsuit. Woo! In addition, regarding elections and election security, did you know that Pinal County is the only county that has precinct-based voting? Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay, do you all know what precinct-based voting is and why it's important?
Yes.
Does anybody, should I go over it?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about it. Okay, so precinct-based voting is how we used to vote. So, and we still do here in Pinal. So basically what we do is we break up our county into various precincts, localities where about 1,000-ish people actually go to a school or go to a church and they actually vote. We don't have these big voting centers like they do in Maricopa County and every other county in Arizona, where you go to you can go to any polling location, they'll print out your ballot, and then you vote right there. Pinal County has preserved the traditional model, which I think is the most secure, and that's to have precinct-based voting. Okay, so they split up the county into those various localities. And the reason why I think that's important is because not only for security, but you know who is going to those polling locations. They're assigned to a polling location. You can't vote outside those things. You know who your neighbors are. You know who don't belong in those particular places. And so we're the only county. Well, guess what? Our Secretary of State has decided to say no more precinct-based voting. He said, Pinal County, you're going to change and you're going to go to the Maricopa County model. What do you think about that? No, it's not good. And we don't want to do that. And so we currently sued him, and we're in litigation right now to preserve our precinct-based voting. That's extremely important, and we need to continue to push for that. We have a hearing in about a week and a half where we are going to present arguments to try to retain that. So think about all of that just right there. This is what you voted for. This is what you told me you wanted, and this is what we're deliberating on. All right? This is extremely important. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Now we need your support moving forward. There's a lot of things happening in our county. Just like I said, there's a lot of people that say one thing to get your vote and then do something else when they get into office. And that's what we're experiencing, unfortunately, here in the county. So we need your continued support to say no. We need to preserve the Constitution. We need to preserve people's freedoms. And we want to keep our community members safe. So we need your continued support to do that. Now, of course, there's a lot of things going on in our country and in our county right now. And this will kind of be my final point before I take questions. And, for instance, I know I currently serve in the military right now. Is anybody else serving currently? Okay, so no. But we have some veterans in here. Thank you for your service. Semper Fi, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So there's a lot of things going on in our world and our county. Polling numbers are going down. It's not looking necessarily good according to the poll numbers for Republicans right now. But I think what we need to do is we need to look back and to say, in turbulent times, who do we look to? What do we do? And I think we have some lessons we can learn, and I'm glad I'm standing by this cross because I think that's probably the number one place to look. But I want to go back to a prophet named Jeremiah. Has anybody heard of him? Okay, so there was a lot of things going on in Jeremiah's time, and I just want to talk about this briefly. A lot of things going on in Jeremiah's time. The Syrian Empire had just fallen. The Egyptian Empire was in turmoil. And there was this new empire that Jeremiah was warning that was coming from the north called Babylon. And this person by the name of Nebuchadnezzar, and he was warning that they're going to come in and destroy us. They're going to come in and destroy us. And he said the way to stop this, the way to prevent this is to do one thing. You know what that was? Repent. Get on your knees and pray. Get on your knees and repent. And look to God, look to our Savior for our salvation, not to government. Okay?
Amen.
Let's put this all in perspective. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of nonsense and misinformation going on Twitter, Instagram, all these other social media platforms. But I think we need to focus on the most important thing, which will smooth out those rides. And that's to look to Him and remember those things about repentance and getting back to our first principles, the thing that we know is true, the thing that we know is right. And I think that will get us through these times. With that, you also need to start telling your friends. The Republican Party is not done. I think this war is likely going to end soon, and hopefully we can get back on track on what was promised by our president and our federal government. I think we'll probably get there, hopefully before the midterms. But if not, we need to remember what we believe. We believe in smaller government. We believe in accountable government. And we certainly don't believe in the fraud and the other nonsense that's happening in our country. We're destroying ourselves from within. And the only way to fix that is through accountability, but ultimately through repentance. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Please raise your hand if you have a question. We have a couple of us walking around with a microphone, so.
Yes, first off, thank you for a great job. The question I have is actually a couple real quick ones. One, you get secure prosecutions, and you see it all over the U.S. Then it gets in front of a judge, and it gets degraded down. How do you deal with that? And the second question is, you mentioned the sheriff that's against this. Could you name the sheriff?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, Ross Teeple. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Go look at it. It's in the papers. Yeah, I can give you the legal documents.
What motivated him? Because
I don't know, you have to ask him. But the Board of Supervisors and the sheriff have sued me to stop me from working with ICE. Yeah. All right, to answer your first question, it's illegal for a court to downgrade a criminal charge. They can dismiss it, but they're not allowed to downgrade a criminal charge.
But the sentencing
can't go down. No, not legal here in Arizona.
Oh.
And not only that, if for some reason a judge did decide to do that, we would appeal. And I have one of the best appellate lawyers in the state. I stole him from the feds. I stole her from the feds. She's fantastic. So we'll get that fixed. Yep.
Well, I think you kind of answered a little bit, but
Yep.
I was wondering, what are they objecting to? Why don't they want you to partner with ICE?
Well, you'll have to read it in their legal documents. They say that only they have the authority to tell me who I can partner with. So it's a pride issue. It's a authorities issue. That's really what they're saying.
Okay.
I disagree. I am the lead prosecutor in the county. I have been given authority. And that's the other thing I think people misunderstand is the Board of Supervisors has come out and basically said, you work for us. And it's like, nope, that's not what statute says. We need to think about, this goes back to first principles, that point I made about Jeremiah. Going back to the basics, going back to the sources. I don't know if you see this, I have these lapel pins, and I can give a couple of these out if anybody wants one. But one of the phrases is a Latin phrase called ad fontes. You know what that means? Back to the sources, back to the beginning, and I think that's where we need to start. But where we get our authority from is, guess where?
God.
Well, ultimately, yes, but in Arizona law, where? Our statutes, you give us the authority. You tell us what you want me to do, what I can do and what I can't do in statute. So my authority, just like the Board of Supervisors, just like the sheriff, just like the recorder, just like our justice of the peace, just like our constable, all of our authority is from in statute. We can go read it. The constable can go to a statute and say, this is what I do. And the same thing with me. I can go to a statute and say, this is what I do, this is what my authority is. And so the board says, you work for me? No. Arizona law says, no. I work for the people. Now I represent the board and I give them legal advice, but that also doesn't mean they need to follow it. But ultimately, my authority comes from statute. Yeah.
Your discussion of Adrian Fontes, who I think is a satanic child, quite frankly, has he got the authority over Dana Lewis to direct her to do what he wants her to do?
That's what he's trying.
Under the statute,
Yeah.
who is she responsible to?
Yeah, so this goes back to authority. So who is she responsible to? There's two lines of authority. So what he's saying, so you have the statutes, which is election law, and there's multiple different types of sections in election law and administrative code. And then you have another funny thing called the Elections Procedures Manual. Are you familiar with that?
To a degree.
Okay, so let me see if I can break this down semi-quickly. So the Secretary of State has been granted authority to design a document called the Elections Procedures Manual. He's supposed to put one out every year. Basically what that lays out is how elections are to be conducted in the state of Arizona. What he's saying is that under his authority in designing the Elections Procedures Manual, he can dictate whether we have a voting center model or a precinct-based voting model. He's saying he can do that in the Elections Procedures Manual. We, the Board of Supervisors, Dana Lewis, myself, have said no, you don't have that authority. Our statute under our elections law says that the Board of Supervisors retains that authority, not the Secretary of State. And that's why we're in litigation right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can break it down more if you want.
No.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yep,
And elections laws come from the state legislature,
they do.
not from the Secretary
Not
of
from the
State.
Secretary of State. Yep.
What can you tell us about somebody was collecting information, the 2020 fraud that happened? We had some people come in and take some documents. What's the update on that? Do you know by chance?
On the federal
It
side?
was, correct, it was on the news that, who came in? Somebody came in to.
I know the DOJ.
The DOJ.
I know the DOJ is
DOJ.
doing an investigation. I have not spoken with the U.S. Attorney on that issue. It's a separate issue.
Okay.
So let me talk about elections a little bit and litigation regarding elections. The same authority that grants us elections power also grants me authority on when I can challenge an elections issue and when I cannot. So I think a lot of people think, well, you're in office right now. Why aren't you examining election fraud? Do you want to know why? It's really, really simple. I'm not allowed to. And I believe that we read the Constitution the way it's written, and they don't read into it. I don't believe that I can act outside our authority. And so the reason why I can't examine it and look at 2022 or 2020 is because I don't have the authority to do that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to act outside my authority. Now the Department of Justice has a different authority. You know, like, let me give you a really good example that might clear this up. In Casa Grande, I want to say about a year and a half ago, there was a church, synagogue that burned down. This person burned down a synagogue, and we thought, this is potentially a hate crime. So we looked into it, and we found out the guy was just mentally ill. It wasn't a hate crime. He just happened to be there. He was transient. He had gone there multiple times just to get food. Trust me, we looked into it, we examined it, we talked to him, we ran it down, because that if it was a hate crime, we certainly were going to charge it as anti-Semitism. But we found out it wasn't. But the DOJ came in and they said they can charge it under one of their hate crimes laws. So while we're bound by our state statute that didn't meet our requirements, it did meet the Department of Justice's requirements. So they were able to charge him for that hate crime law. So it's just separate sovereigns, separate lines of authority.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Tricia?
You're going to throw me a curveball?
No,
Come on, bring it.
Actually, so the last time we spoke, I had expressed some concerns that I had about the way your prosecutors were handling the 347.
That's right, yep.
They actually reached out to me. So people on your team reached out to me. I think it was about 12 hours later, and they were on top of it.
Yep.
We actually pulled the cases. We looked into it further. There were very specific situations involving those 3 cases that I was concerned about.
Yep.
So I just wanted to say I was wrong. You were right.
You don't need to say that. No, I think the bigger point is this, is that when people do bring those issues up, we really do look into them, and we look into them very quickly.
Yes.
Because immediately after, I think it was right after that meeting, I don't remember when that was, like a year ago?
It was about a year ago.
Yeah, so we looked into that immediately to see what the issue was.
Yeah,
So
and they're doing a great job.
thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that up. I had another lady email me, and I called her within an hour. And she says, who is this? I said, it's Brad Miller, Pinal County attorney. No way. I said, yeah, you asked a question, I want to answer it, I want to be responsive. And she said something very similar, like, I didn't expect you to call. Well, I've been a lawyer 18 years, I've talked to lots of people. You hired me, and yes, most time I'll have my staff call, but you hired me to handle these issues, and so I will call you back. And so, no, thanks for bringing that up, and I'm glad we got that cleared up. Yeah.
Just a comment. Have you been shocked by the amount of pushback you get on things? Was it worse than you expected it to be?
I think the issue is this, I think the pushback is a sign that we're doing something right.
Excellent.
Okay? Because unfortunately, we get a lot of people that get a little too comfortable. They think, and you know, I was in a meeting the other day, and I decide all the officer-involved shooting. So if an officer shoots somebody, I decide whether it was a good shoot or bad shoot, whether we in fact prosecute the officer. You know, I've been doing that my entire career with Marines and sailors and Coast Guardsmen. And we handle the same thing with police officers. And she said, and one of the people said, well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you're important or something like that. And I said, whoa, hang on a second. That meeting has started off completely wrong. I'm not important, the position is. I'm here temporarily. This is not my identity as a Pinal County attorney, because I'm going to be moving on eventually. This is not a career for me. And so I think we got a lot of people who get elected to office and think that this is a popularity contest, or that I'm now a celebrity, or I'm important. I think it's the exact opposite. I'm here to serve you, not you to serve me. And I think if more politicians looked at it like that, and looked at it as a temporary job that we're just passing through, then I think we would have less of these issues that we're seeing. We wouldn't have people who shouldn't be in the Senate because they literally can't function. You know, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But regarding the pushback issue, I think we have some legacies that need to go. And I think that's what you're seeing, is that people refusing to transition to change. And there's a lot of change happening in Pinal County. I don't know if you saw the latest numbers. We're up, I think we're at 565,000. I think our census in 2020 was about 450. So we're growing substantially as a county. We're changing substantially as a county. And I think it's time that we change and update with the times. And I think we're seeing that conflict that has probably existed in every generation. So did I expect the conflict? Yes. Did I expect it this much? Probably, because I knew I was going to do what was right. But I'm just happy we have support of especially this group and people like you, so that it tells us that, yes, this is the direction we should continue to go.
Thank you for your comments. As I mentioned to you a little earlier, I just moved here about 6 months ago, but live in Providence, and noticed that there's a significant amount of racing going on Smith Enke and on Honeycutt.
Yeah.
And you can hear it from the house at 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever. So just a question, are you aware of that? Is there something that can be recommended to the local law enforcement to maybe just be present sometimes and dissuade the youngsters from doing that?
Absolutely. So let me introduce a couple of my staff who are here. The person sitting in front of you is my chief of staff, Jeremiah. Right here. I have Christy Kelly. Raise your hand, Christy is my public information officer. So she'll give you contact information for me. Okay, so I want to talk to you about that. And then right next to her, Stephanie. She runs our HR department, and she's our biggest cheerleader for our office. So if you want to hear something good, talk to her. She'll be happy to tell you all the great stuff we're doing. She balances me out, because I tend to look at the negative, being a lawyer for 18 years. So yeah, please get with us, and I want to talk about that. I want to see exactly where it is, to see if it's either the city jurisdiction or county, and then I can go to them, because I know the chief, and we can go talk. Yep. Thank you for that. All
Any
right.
other questions?
Are you sure? Nothing else?
Going once, going twice.
Oh, there we go.
We'll go back.
We got a couple more.
Couple more.
This is a little off subject.
All right, my favorite.
I want to know the impact of AI with legal profession.
Yep.
And how it's impacting. Because I know now it took 20 hours of research to do a case, and now with AI, you could get it in 20 minutes with all the arguments and everything. Is that impacting your office? And what do you see in the future for this?
Yeah, good point. We could probably talk about this for hours. Maybe we'll talk after.
Yeah.
But I need to get home.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, so AI is a tool, just like anything else. And my office implements AI. We have AI tools, and we're trying to implement more AI for efficiency. It helps with our quality control checks. It helps with a lot of other things. It helps with translation. So say we get a language or a certain dialect of Spanish, it can assist us with that. So a lot of things that it can help us with. It has not eliminated jobs yet. But that's potential for the future. But I see AI as, again, just like any generational tool. It's something that's going to substantially change the practice of law. It's going to substantially change how we run our government, how businesses operate, and we're already seeing impacts now. And so it's something that we need to adapt and grow into. And so we're starting to implement these tools. I know even the county has started to adopt the Microsoft AI platform. They haven't figured out exactly how it's going to be used. I think we're still in the very infancy stage of that, modeling about how we use it, what efficiencies there are, if it is more efficient. But it's something that we're adopting and going to grow with. But yeah, it's going to substantially change everything. So I think it's, I know the head of Anthropic has come out and said 80% of lawyers are going to be gone in 12 months. Like, I don't know what that guy's talking about. That's absolutely not true. That guy's crazy. But it will change the way practice happens, yes. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get rid of 80% of jobs. Yep.
I appreciate that you're working on the 347 tagging people.
Yeah.
When you come out of Maricopa, they're not going 65 when they get out of Maricopa, they're going 65 in Maricopa.
Yep.
So it's so dangerous, and that's the only part of being in Maricopa that I don't like.
Yeah.
We love the community, but it's impossible.
Well, I know they're doing traffic, for lack of a better term, stings here in Maricopa. I know we've started to enforce a lot of the rules in Maricopa and charging more people with criminal speeding. So those things are happening. We've had several cases where we've had people pull out guns and claim self-defense, and we've charged those people with aggravated assault. So we're trying to get at these folks, but if you see something, let us know. Again, Christy's right here, get my information, and otherwise call 911 if you see something dangerous like that and call it in. We are going to charge it, and we're going to try to put a stop to it because it is creating a very dangerous situation. And I know emotions are high. I've driven the 347. I don't drive it as much as you all, but I drive it, and I'll just say the few times that I drive it, I'm frustrated by it too. So I feel your pain on a micro scale.
911 better hire more people to answer these phone calls then.
Yeah. Now, please, but we do need people to call, or else we don't know.
All right, Brad Miller, ladies and gentlemen.